Hi everyone. We are live again for a third time making this webinars, and I'm waiting right now for our first guest on the third webinar representing Black women in media, which will be my friend Jabulile from South Africa. Hi Dari, hi. Hi everyone, good to see you. So, there you go. Just waiting for Jabulile to get online and send me a request to be in the video. Hi. Hi everyone. Hi. Just waiting for our first guest to get online. Hi. I hope she's getting online now. Oh, this IG Lives. It's always something complicated with the IG Lives. But we're not giving up. So, maybe just an intro about the guest I'm having tonight. Our first guest will be South African journalist and mentor, producer, a media host, Jabulile. And my second guest in the second round of the webinar will be the Caribbean, Guadeloupe-based journalist. Yes. So this is it. Oh my goodness, I cannot believe it. It's happening. It's happening. It's true. Good evening. Good evening to South Africa.
Hi, Alina. How are you? How's Germany?
I'm good. I'm good. How are you, Jabulile? This is actually, I was thinking, this is our very, very first time communicating, chatting live, exchanging. We've known each other for so many years through Facebook, through social media, mainly actually Facebook. This is how we started, you know. But so glad, so thankful you to be on this platform. Thank you so much for saying yes and joining me. And yeah, so let's do it. How are you? How are you? How have you gone through these times of a lockdown, of COVID and Black Lives Matter all over the world, everything that is happening? How this did impact your life in a personal matter?
Yeah, I mean, lockdown has been very intense for a lot of people. Something
Mm,
that, the whole globe is struggling with. And I think for some reason, we probably were just out of the woods as Africa at some point until about three
yes,
months ago. We've just pretty much, in particular, South Africa, we literally are the top five in the world now. So, yeah, pandemic times are not easy at all, but I think as a creative, you've got to also
yes,
just try to find other
yes.
ways to sustain your work and your passions despite what's happening.
Jibril, it's very quiet. I can hear you almost. It's like it's
Is it better now?
it's much better now. Thank you.
Ah,
Thank you. Yes,
perfect. All
yes,
right.
it's
I hope
perfect.
other people can hear as well because I see they were
Yes,
okay. I hope they
you're,
can also hear. So, yeah,
now it's
I mean,
perfect.
Yeah. So I mean, I'm happy to have joined this conversation. We've been talking on Facebook for some time. It's
For
funny
sure.
how the
Yes,
digital space is so amazing because you keep in touch with people for years, even though you haven't encountered them. So yeah, it's a pleasure to chat with you finally.
thank you so much. Thank you for saying yes
Yeah.
and being there for us, for every one of us. So I just want to start for everyone who is watching us right now, who going to watch us later, because the IG will be, it will be put on social media, will be put on IG live section. So maybe for everyone who is watching Jabulile right now and asking, I know that she's a journalist, she's a mentor, but what else she does? Because I want to talk about you, about everything you are doing, but what can you say about like, what is Jabulile doing?
Yeah. So you're right, I'm a trained business journalist, practiced in traditional media for some time, and I quickly left that space because I think I, realized pretty soon that I had a few other interests over and above the newsroom. So I just quickly decided I'm not going to stay here for long because I think
Wow.
naturally I am a writer, so I didn't see the need to be employed as one forever. I really had an interest in other things, mainly social justice work. So I'm a social justice activist and do quite a lot of work in that regard, also as a human rights activist. And over and above that, I also just run my own media company. So I'm a director of a media company that essentially does public relations and stakeholder management for corporate and also
Yeah,
the public sector. So it's a wide range of things, but really the primary, sort of passion at the heart of what I do is really based purely on the love for communications, for media, for storytelling, for empowerment of young people, young women, and just also the development of Africa. So that's truly at the heart of what I do, over and above all the other things.
yes, yes. Jubilee, it's not a secret that you have been chosen as one of the 40 leaders in South Africa who are changing and impacting the life of young South Africans. This is huge achievement. One of the 44 South African leaders. Congratulations on. And I've
Thank you
been
so
following
much.
so many years, and it's so influential in my life as well. My career has been impacted through your work. But tell us more about this. How are you dealing with this? How are you changing the life of South African boys and girls at the same time?
Yeah, so this honor is quite, I mean, I just feel like I'm not as deserving, but
You are.
so this is a book that is being compiled by one of the most amazing young Black writers in South Africa. She's written 8 books. She's 28 years old, so this will be her ninth book. And
Okay.
what they've done is, based on the historical aspect of the 1976, where, there were Soweto uprisings in South Africa back in the day,
Yes.
where young people took to the streets marching against oppression, system of oppression, and Afrikaans in particular as a language of oppression. And they didn't want to be taught in that. And that's created a narrative of how, Black people, or particularly young people, have been able to really stand up for themselves and for what's right when it comes to this country. Of course,
Yes.
that was at that time during the apartheid era. So it's been about 44 years today since that uprising happened. And what they've done is they've taken, sort of handpicked about 44 young leaders or emerging leaders of this particular generation, of which I happen to be a part of, primarily from just the basis of the kind of impact that you make in your society with young people in particular, and just through mentorship, not just mentorship, others are business people, entrepreneurs, trailblazers, really. I mean, incredible people. That's why I still don't know how I made the list, but it's an honor to have been part of that book. And I think it's, for me, it's not so much about having made the list of a book of so many leaders, but probably about the importance of how we should document the impact we make in our community in this generation, so we can have some form of reference for generations to come.
Yes. Amazing.
Yeah.
Amazing. Congratulations. Yes. Uh,
Thank you.
we're talking tonight about digital empowerment, at the same time about female storytelling of us Black women. So, what will it take for us women, but at the same time for men, to start creating a media that advances gender equality?
Sure. That question is actually very important. And first of all, I like to always point out each time I get a question like this that so gender equality is a collective effort. So it's not up to women to come to the party and push this narrative of self-empowerment, of, bring us to the table and whatnot. It takes an entire community. And I think it's very important that we get to realize that, for us to advance gender equality, we've got to be able to look at the concept of it holistically. For example, I was just reading through some report that was published by G20 that was looking at organizations of like economic cooperations and development across various countries in not just in Africa but just across the globe. And some of the evidence that they show in there showed that particularly in digital media or in the digital space, digital technologies, there's a constant raising sort of need for young women in particular, and I say young, to be let in. So access is an issue. So the space is moving quite rapidly globally, and it's clear that it's a demand, and that's probably the order of the day. Yeah. But young women are left behind, mostly obviously from dire, communities that are quite remote with very limited access, low income households, and pretty much just communities you wouldn't even expect to be struggling with certain things, and they don't have. So for us to be able to influence the debate at a higher level, where we can somewhat begin to bring in interventions that can help us develop policies that will bring in inclusive solutions to gender equality. It's not just rhetoric. We've got to really be action oriented with it, with regards to literally, schooling, young women in terms of technology and teaching and helping them align to the needs and the demands of what the global marketplace really requires in a digital space. Because if they cannot compete to what's required globally, then they can't compete at a global age, it's a problem. So gender equality, it's also not an event. It's going to take some time. So it doesn't just affect how we can position the digital space, but it also has a lot to do with what we actually teach the boys in homes in terms of how we raise the boy child to treat and relate to the girl child from home before they even get to society. So the stereotypes are quite critical for us to begin to start, making sure that how we position both the girl and the boy child is in a way that makes them both understand that they actually are quite capacitated as fully functional human beings to operate in the world in whatever space they choose to operate in.
Mm-hmm. Sure. What do you think is the main reason for us Black women that are not well represented globally and gender-based in the media?
So I think we probably are not well represented. We definitely are not well represented in the global space at all. There's an article I read about how African American women were struggling to identify with some of the narratives and realities in the digital space. And this is simple because who are the producers, who are the filmmakers, who are the scriptwriters, storytellers, because this is where the narrative obviously is positioned and that's where it comes from. But then again, when we are represented, as limited as it is often, it's changing now, of course, but we know we've had to constantly make a noise about, occupying that space. Yeah. We occupy that space and we're represented, but it's also not appropriate. So it's with a very preconditioned type of perception, which Black women are this. And I'll make an example about this, how Tyler Perry movies, a lot of people are maybe not so much of fans of his movies because of how he's constantly portraying Black women, right? I mean, it's subject to interest and whatnot. He's a great filmmaker and whatnot, but his film have been quite an interesting point of review in terms of how Black women are constantly portrayed in his narrative, and how perhaps even the hip hop, World Academy positions Black women when we do get to be in the big screens. It's in what sort of taste and level that makes you really question quite a lot. But we hardly find reference when we're looking for Black women medical doctors, Black women lawyers, Black women journalists, quite significant, prominent key role players in strategic decision making. They're there, but it's not as easy as you would easily find somebody who's going to dance on some video. I mean, choreography is great and all, but I'm just saying,
we've got to do more on the good about who we are as Black women globally in the market than it's currently being done. We've got to put more effort in that. And I think it's a voice of, again, everybody. I cannot say, I mean, if I boycott something because it doesn't represent me, not everything has to be a protest, but at some point we've got to learn to take a stand with certain things. So if something doesn't relate to you and it doesn't represent you, don't consume it, don't entertain it, don't cushion it. Because if you are succumbing to it, you are silently saying that, fine, I'll take it. It's not necessarily the best, but I'll take it. And I think it's important that we begin to speak up in terms of, this is who we are. Please show more of who we really are, because there's so much to us than also just being Black women. We do so much, and you need to make sure other younger women see this much that we are, so that they can have reference of what actually is possible.
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
That's, I think we are living in such times of digital era, as you said, which we can use it in a very positive way and create all of these platforms, empower ourselves. And as I always say, we do have our voices, but how do we use our voices? We cannot be silent anymore because we've been silent for so many years, for decades, for like centuries we've been silent. And now it's our time to talk about this. And
Yeah.
if you cannot talk about this, then write about this. What is the best way for you, to put everything that it's holding you back? Put it on paper, put it like on a platform like this. Just be open, but don't silent anymore. So thank you so much for being there and giving all of this, let's say, South African girls the opportunity to talk about something. And this is actually it's very interesting for me. How do you work when it's about changing lives? When we talk about changing lives of young people, of young South African girls, how do you change a life? How do you start? What is the first step you take to help them realize who they are and what is important to be changed in their lives?
Yeah, I actually love that question very much, because when we come to development, I'm as practical as we possibly can be, because we have a lot of politicians who do the talking, and I've always said, leave it to them to talk. That's what they like to do. So I think as an activist, probably it's quite inspiring in a sense that you get to have the space to dabble here and there. So you have that leeway to navigate systems and be a little loud sometimes and irritate a few people, but for a good thing. And I think before you can empower any young girl, you've got to perhaps help them deal with the mindset first of self-confidence and self-esteem. Because I cannot say I'm a mentor and I mentor young women, and young girls if I kind of don't help them set their minds right. Because it's very difficult to change or rather influence grown-up women. You'd rather start helping younger women, girls. This is why the work around girls is so important. Same as you've got to, that same attention you've got to give to boys too. So what I essentially do and have been doing for about, I think 12 years now is essentially mentorship. It's when I started, I wasn't even aware that this is mentorship. The most tiring process ever, and I've had to learn to put structure to it over the years. It was not an idea or a goal or a dream I had to say I want to have some mentorship program or whatnot.
Like
But I
process.
found myself, having no choice but to do that because of the number of requests for mentorship I was getting. So I had no choice but to put some structure into it so I'm able to help as many young girls as I can, because I cannot do like a one-to-one ad hoc requests. There's a life. I'm also working on my career. I'm also kind of developing myself as a woman too. But
Yes.
I have a deep passion to really help young women. So I thought, let me put some structure of some sort, which I'm still working on. Eventually, perhaps we can, collaborate with other institutions, and we actually are working on that to try and see if we can formalize it into some form of an academy. But for now, there's a structure of a program where I help mentor them with regards to their careers, but mostly personal development. And there are things that are a little beyond my expertise, where I have to also do referrals to qualified people like psychologists or
Sure.
counselors, because then you'll get cases of depression, suicide, and whatnot. But the idea is to at least travel with them and hold their hands, from at some point where you meet them to a point where they can either walk by themselves or somebody else takes over and helps them through. But primarily, obviously, focused on those who are interested in journalism, media, communications, because it's easier to be able to hold someone's hand in a career that you're in already, and just help them through that. Yeah.
It's amazing. Which do you think are the main risks that Black women, it doesn't matter where they live, they have to face in order to fight patriarchy that is still living in our community?
Yeah.
It's not said, not said, but it's here. It's real. It's like coronavirus.
it's
It's here and it's real. How do we fight?
it's it's a
Yeah.
problem. It's a
It's
problem, actually. And people think you begin fighting patriarchy when you get to the workplace, which is
mm,
a fallacy, because you don't start fighting patriarchy when you get to have an office
yeah.
as a big girl, now dealing with big career problems. You
Hmm.
start fighting a system of patriarchy when you in the playgrounds, and there's just a boy who feels that they will, because they're a boy, they can do something better than you because they're boys.
Definitely.
And because this is why I had said, how are families raising boys? So you see, it comes from a very fundamental element of how kids are raised to understand both gender roles and just to understand their capacity as young as people who can operate normally.
Humans.
So I think the risks that you say, what are the risks? The risks for me are, number one, it doesn't start at a high level. By the time you get to be a grown-up woman and you're facing patriarchy, it's not the first time you see patriarchy in your life. If you sit down and you think, you'll realize how many times you've had to encounter silent tendencies of patriarchy as you were growing up as a woman, as a young woman, right? But what perhaps for me maybe makes me a little bit more worried is the kind of help we're offering to young women to help them navigate a system of patriarchy, because it's a very systematic thing. Not just in Africa, it's even worse in Africa because there's other cultural nuances added to it, but it's also global. So this is why we need to help young women understand who they are, teach them a sense of assertiveness, and somehow incorporate in them a very strong sense of self, so that without fighting, without being nasty, without being really just dramatic, they're just naturally able to stand for what they believe in, because that's what they believe in, because the mind already knows how to identify somebody who's pushing them over, or somebody who's trying to silence them when they try to speak, or somebody who's trying to press them down when they're trying to, sort of take up their wings and really just fly as they should. So I think the risks are the fact that, number one, communities are not supportive. So once you begin to start talking against such things, you labeled as, she's aggressive, she talks too much, she will not get a husband, she won't get married because she has a big mouth. And if she does get married, she won't be able to keep her man because there's no man who will be able to tolerate a woman with a big mouth. So society is an issue for me. And we need to be able to somehow help society unlearn some of the toxic messaging that it has been sitting on when it comes to really navigating patriarchy, because it's not helping young girls at all. The second one is, I'd say women themselves, right? We are part of the problem because some of us do safeguard patriarchy. Some of us do perpetuate nuances of patriarchy. And this is a problem because then it essentially fights against whatever efforts are there that are trying to, break down this patriarchal system. So these are risks. And at the heart of all these risks, and I'm mentioning just a few, is just vulnerable young women or older women who are really just so vulnerable because nobody's taking their sides. Nobody understands where you're coming from. You're not allowed to be yourself. You're not allowed to reach your full potential because you're constantly being restricted. If it's not by the system, it's by society. If it's not by society, it's your family. If it's not by your family. So because everybody believes that women are less than. So we've got to do this unlearning, exercise, which is very tedious because this is centuries and centuries of traditions and systems, right? Can you imagine where you have to begin? I think of my situation in an African culture. Where do I even start sitting down to try and bring forth some efforts of, patriarchy? But I think the world, because of 21st century, the contemporary times, we sometimes even have elders who kind of get what we're talking about, because somehow people understand that actually girls are also gifted, girls are also human beings, women are actually quite capable, let them fly. If they want to fly, don't stand in their way, just let them fly. So I think these are some of the risks, the fact that when women do speak and when women do come to the fore, you know, really wanting to take up space that they equally are also allowed to take in this world as proper human beings, they're being restricted. And these are risks, because the risks doesn't just end with restriction. Restriction then extends to abuse, because then you speak too much, to silence you, we've got to abuse her, we've got to treat her badly. So that all these efforts that are conniving together to try and keep you caged so that you don't eventually get to. So these are risks that women actually face when it comes to patriarchy. Some of the risks, at least. Yeah.
But we're talking at the same time, everything, most of the things you have described, women are going through trauma, so many traumas being caused by patriarchy. And so many of us, so many of African women, I would say in general, like West African, because I'm half Nigerian. And I've been watching, do you know the MTV Sugar series, which has been taking place in Kenya and Nigeria? I've been watching it for the last couple of weeks. And I've realized what patriarchy actually has destroyed on entire continent. How many negative causes and what traumas Black women, African women are dealing with because nonsense. I'm always calling it nonsense that has caused,
Yeah, it is.
and it has an influence as well in Europe on women. Yes, but how we deal with these traumas. We are talking because you're a mentor, and I will shift now the conversation. We'll go to mentoring and empowering women in a different way in a healing process. How do we heal? How do we step back in this kind of digital world, but at the same time, it's a chaos. And we are going now in times of changes, times of very fast changing, everything around us changing. How do we heal as women from this that is happening around us every single moment?
Yeah. So I think, you know, perhaps our first step towards healing as women would be to begin considering the dimensions that are there in a relationship between race, the market, and the media, right? We've got to be able to infiltrate and occupy various spaces of society and industry, not because we want to get there and change things, but because, number one, we belong there, because we belong anyway in this space, right?
Right.
Yes. So we've got to be able to examine some of the tensions that also exists between women and race. Because the minute you talk about women and what they face, that's all well and good. But there's a different layer that adds to all the other nonsense, as you would put it, that women face again. Which you're fighting patriarchy, you're fighting discrimination at work, perhaps even sexual harassment or whatnot, and being overlooked or underpaid, which is a major issue even in 2020, right, globally. And then on top of that, perhaps you've got to handle gender-based violence. So on top of everything you're facing as a woman, you've got to handle abuse, perhaps even rape. It's a lot. And we've got to be able to see how all these issues you know, affect women and trigger women into becoming, you know, not problematic, but quite very, very tense. It's like we're always on our toes. There's a quote I saw the other time that said, being a Black woman is like being black twice because you deal with the issue of blackness because you're Black, and then you're a woman, and that just being a woman has its own country. You live there and it has its own things. So I think we need to be able to really be brave and start occupying spaces, because it's good to speak, right? And we speak all the time. If there's one thing women do right is speak, we talk, we always talk, right? And I think at some point even people get irritated with us because we're always talking. But I think we need to move. Yes.
Yes, we need to.
We have to speak, because you look at the historical aspect of how women's voices have been treated. Women were not allowed. So even if you wanted to speak, you just were not allowed. And, you know, if you push hard, then there's punishment for that. So speaking is very important, but I think we also need to challenge ourselves to go beyond speaking so that we are able to change these realities and actually co-create better futures for not just ourselves, but for younger women coming after us. So it's okay to speak now in a sense that we're contributing towards building resilient communities and sort of building, resilient structures, if you may, in the spaces we occupy, in the spaces we hold as women. But I really would like to urge us as women to begin pushing for policy changes and legislation changes and effect. And this is already happening. There are incredible women across the globe in Africa who are really deeply rooted in some of the efforts that advance feminism, in a sense of really trying to assist women get what belongs to them, what really is theirs, and just for people to open the door to women so they can also come in and sit at the table and equally contribute to the economics of the country, of businesses, and also most of the spaces that are always seen as sort of politics of the big male politics type of a thing, of which there's no such a thing, right? So I think we need to really learn to teach ourselves to go beyond our talks. Women are very, as we speak, it's great because then in those spaces we get to heal, we get to learn, we get to navigate emotions and do all these things. But I think we need to move because, in all honesty, I'll tell you this, Alina, men win because they move, they act, and this is a fact.
Oh,
so
yeah.
we don't need to be men. We don't want to be men.
No.
But I've always said there's an element I like with men because they will talk and they even do that very limitedly, but then they move and they just action oriented and they always get what they want. But women only talk, so we can never get what, because then we don't act.
Patience.
So we need to teach. Yes, we need to also teach young women that aspect. It's okay to speak as much as you can, write, do whatever, but you've got to move and actually take action, because it's in the action that we take that we are building the reality that we want. When we take action, we are building the story and documenting our reality so that there's reference 10 years from now in terms of women of 2020 did this, and they just didn't do it by talking. They actually, put into effect this policy and that policy. And I'm saying this, of course not, sort of downplaying the effort that has taken place globally. There's a lot of stuff that's been legislated and a lot of policy changes that have taken place that women were pushing. So women are really coming up the ranks and they really are pushing for quite awesome things. So this is great. And I think this is the momentum I personally would like to see, because I want to move to a point where we're done talking. We've got to see the change. We are part of this community as well. And we need to also see things that speak back to what our needs are as women.
Yes. Jabulile, thank you so much. Actually, I think we covered so many important things. We wanted to speak about digital empowerment, but we shifted to something very, very deep and very important, and I say most important, about healing, about empowering, about acting. That it's talking, it's good, but we need to act. And thank you so much. I'm just waiting for Jessy to send me a request to get into the conversation. But maybe in this last couple of minutes, will this be the last words that you say to all Black and brown girls all over the world who are going to watch us, or just like put it in a space there? What is the first step they to take if they're willing to fulfill their dreams? They have a vision and a dream. What is the first step to take?
I would advise them, and I mean, I'm speaking from experience with this, it's not easy. Number one, be yourself, because it's also very challenging these days, because people have this hallucination and this fallacy of an idea that to achieve something, you've got to be somebody else. And I think young women need to understand that to achieve or be anything, you don't need to be anybody else. You just need to be yourself. I think that's a first step to having achieved whatever it is that you even want to do in the first place. Yes. And when you are yourself, you may not win on quite a lot of things, but you'll certainly win on the things you should win on, right? So I think they need to learn to be content with that fact. It's a fact that you will not win with all things, but you will win with those that you should win with. Be content with that, because you certainly cannot take in everything. And secondly is to be consistent. It's not easy. Even I struggle with consistency at my big age. but you've got to be consistent. It's also a learning I'm working on every day in my life, because out of consistency, that is when you actually get results. Like I said, action is key. We can dream all we want and draw, but at some point we've got to move and build those dreams. So consistency is key. I'm not going to tell anybody not to give up, because that will not be an honest assessment, because I give up almost, I think probably in a week, I give up 3 times, right?
You
But
stand up, then you
you
stand up.
have to, yeah, you've got to just get up. You've got to get up and try again. So I'm not going to build this fallacy of some perfect life, but I can say that if you want to achieve something, you keep building it one step at a time. And if there are other external noises that disturb you, sometimes shut down a bit and ignore those noises and just do some internal work so you can refocus and get some energy to focus on what you're building. Because one thing for sure, though, that I can say is that nothing is impossible. That part I can say, but it's going to depend on the effort that you put in. So I'd say
Yes,
that just one day at a time, be yourself and know that those dreams are achievable. It's not just some special people who achieve dreams. Anybody can achieve any dream.
sure, sure. Jabulile, thank you so much. So believe in yourself, put the work, and be consistent. This is what Jabulile does tonight, and for every single day of our lives, if we want to fulfill our dreams. Thank you so much. I appreciate you, appreciate who you are, and everything you are doing for us. And we definitely going to keep in touch, and maybe we will have another one collaboration, because I think the time is running out and it's not enough with you. And I
Yeah.
every single moment. Thank you so much. Have a
Thank
nice.
you, Alina.
Thank
Thanks
you.
so much. Take care.
Yeah.
Bye.
Bye bye. So here we are, and I'm waiting. Hi, Jessy. If you can hear me, I'm waiting for your request so we can start our second part and talk to you about digital empowerment and female storytelling. So,
Hello.
hi,
Hi,
Jessy.
Alina. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Doing great. It was very interesting.
Moving from South Africa to Guadeloupe to
Exactly.
Christian, this is possible only because of digital empowerment and digital space. Thank you so much for being
My
on this.
pleasure.
Thank you so much. And just, I remember the first time when I contacted you because of a common friend that we have and sent you a question, can you do this? And you said yes. I felt like, wow, this is what we need in these times of change. This is what we need in supporting each other. It's just saying yes and doing something good for not just each other, but for the generation that it's coming. So thank you so much. I deeply appreciate everything you are doing. And yes. How are you, Jesse? How
I'm
is
doing great. It's my pleasure, first of all. I always love those type of projects. So definitely I was very happy and very touched that you chose me. So thank you. And yes, I'm doing great. I'm doing great despite
I,
the circumstances in the world right now. I'm doing great. I'm blessed.
yes, yes. I'm watching and following your stories, and I said like this is a lockdown in Guadeloupe, so I want to be in Guadeloupe as well and have.
Yes.
It doesn't look like a lockdown. It looks like a vacation with sunny weather and good food and work as well. You're working so much. Tell us more about this radio show that you are hosting, about the summer breeze. What is the main purpose for this? What are you experiencing for you as a journalist now?
So yes, I'm a journalist and a producer. I'm also a TV host. And for the last year and a half, I had the opportunity to host my first radio show on France Television, which is the national TV network in France, knowing that Guadeloupe is French territory as well as Martinique and French Guyana. So
Yes.
I have a TV show, a radio show. It's called Summer Breeze. It's every day from 2 to 5. It's online as well. And they basically told me, well, you can treat any subject that you want. You have open format. So
Wow.
knowing that it's the summer after confinement, we stayed in confinement for 2 months and a half. So we slowly reopened here. People needed a break. Like we couldn't go to the parties yet. So they wanted to have like a little breather. So I decided to do something light, but at the same time, I never do everything that light because I always try to incorporate some, I don't want to say agenda, but in a sense, yes.
Yes,
So in
yes.
my choice of guests, of interviews, I always try to push a message. And in Guadeloupe, there's many issues and there are many questions that I like to treat. And sometimes it's just choosing the right artist that I can interview, even if it's about his CD album. I will always ask him a question about, being an artist that have a voice and how can he help young people. Like I will always make the interview a little bit more meaningful than just, I like to shake my boom on you. And that's to me key. And that's, I like to say, I lure my audience in with, yes, we're going to have these great artists. We're going to have so much fun this afternoon. And once you're already tuned in, I will start throwing some questions that we can really have a deeper meaning.
Yes, amazing, amazing. We're talking tonight, as we said, about digital empowerment, but I want to talk mostly about media because you are a journalist, as we said, you're a producer. You produced two incredible carnival-based productions, documentaries from Trinidad and Tobago and
Yes.
Guadeloupe as well. So, Jessy, you're working, you're based in Guadeloupe, but at the same time, you're living in Miami. So, in these two countries, but working as well in Trinidad and Tobago. How did you see any difference between the representation of women in these countries in media,
Yes.
media in general? Yes.
So it's interesting because I grew up watching French TV. We're in the Caribbean, but we have French TV, and because we are French. So I never saw myself or my sisters or my mother or anybody who looked like me on French television.
Wow.
So when I was growing up, I was like, okay, well, you have to have long, very straight hair, blonde, preferably, or maybe brunette, to be on TV. And that was a dream of mine since I was like 5 or 6 years old, but I could never, even in the commercial, like I would really think that we don't consume, like we don't have any power. We're not part of the landscape, basically.
Yes.
So when I moved to the US, it's been a long time, like it's been like 19 years. It was the first time I turned on TV and I saw, oh, wow, there's a girl with curly hair. Oh, wow, there's a girl, she's black. Oh, there's a light-skinned girl. There's a darker-skinned girl on TV. Because the US have put, I'm not saying that it's perfect, but they had put some quota. Like you had to have some representation in commercial, in a TV station, even though it was still not enough. But once I moved there, it was definitely way much more than what I saw in France. So I was like, wow, this is something maybe I can do. I can follow my dream. So I went to school. I worked really hard. At the time, they told me I would never make it because I have an accent now, because now I'm a foreigner in the US. So I will always remember my teacher, my broadcast teacher told me, you're very talented, but you will not make it on TV in the US because you have a French accent. So you have to take accent reduction classes. The problem is it will never disappear. It's always going to be there. And yes, it was sad. So I decided to do, okay, well, I'm going to do print journalism. So I started writing for the Miami Herald. I started writing from different publications. I started my own blog when at the time it was the beginning of blogging and YouTube. And it went well, but I still had a frustration because I'm like, okay, well, she's from this place. She's on TV. And I kept seeing more and more women, Latino women. I saw Black women on TV. And I'm like, you know what? I can't let this one person in my life dictate what I'm going to be. So I decided to do a casting for my first TV show and I actually got it. And I stopped feeling sorry about my accent the day I realized, well, I have an accent is because I speak more than one language. I have an accent is because I speak 3 or 4 languages. How many do you speak? And that's when I realized, you know what, it's my strength. And sometimes if they don't understand, well, I will repeat it again, or I will make an effort for you to understand better. I had my first TV show, my second TV show, third TV show, and I never stopped from there. And I think here, every time I come to Guadeloupe or in France, throughout the year, I'm talking 18 years span, every time I turn on the TV, I keep thinking, okay, well, did France stay in the Middle Age because we still don't have representation? And when you see a Black person, she's cleaning the toilet or she's like the maid, and it's still this stereotype on TV. And when you see commercials, sometimes you will see a mixed couple, sometimes, or like a mixed child with the curly hair and blue eyes, but it's not, you will not see a commercial with only Black people, for example. And we're in 2020. And I don't understand why. But at the same time, when I moved back here, it was like maybe a year ago, I realized that France is still in the deny process, in a sense of, for them, they don't have, for example, statistic, that will show you how many Black people watch TV, how many Black people are hosting TV shows. They basically deny the problem, saying that there's no racism in France, that we don't need to have communities and we don't need to have statistics based on those communities. So for example, if you are trying to see how many Black people are watching this show at this time, you will not find this in France. It's forbidden. We don't have the statistic.
Wow. Wow.
So
We don't hear about this. We don't know
yeah,
about this.
no,
This is one part we don't know about this. When we talk
no.
about Caribbean, we think, wow, Black people are well represented. This is everything we see. And now we're talking about the truth that you don't see this.
No.
How so you created your own content and you change the vision, you change the perspective that I want my people to be represented. So do you think that the only way for changing this Hollywood stereotypes that have been created of us Black people, so this is how the world sees us, is to start creating our own content and
So
yeah.
so basically, so that's what I started to do when I was in Miami. I was a producer for PBS. It's the #1 national non-for-profit TV public broadcasting system. They were really good because they told me, okay, well, we're opening this digital platform. I was the main producer. It was a year after YouTube was created. So it was very new. Nobody really know how to do it. And it was specialized in Miami and Florida. And they say, you can do whatever you want. And I say, okay, well, I will do all type of stories, but I will jump on the occasion to also tell stories of my people, of what I know. So I went in all the different communities in Miami, Haitian community. I went to Caribbean community, Jamaica, Trinidad, and I started interviewing people. I started interviewing on issues that concern them. Then I went even to the Latino community because they were still underrepresented in the US. So I started doing this. I started using my own voice to give them a voice. And I produced more than 3,000 videos with them. And every time they ask me, okay, what kind of project do you want to do? I decided, well, if I can do whatever I want, this is what I want. And my first documentary with PBS, which was hosted by Andy Garcia, the actor, was about the art in Miami. And I chose a Haitian cultural center, a Cuban museum, and an African-American lady who was a classical ballet trainer. Because to me, those are the stories you couldn't see on PBS. You saw a lot of stories on other type of communities, but not ours. And a lot of time in Miami, when you thought about Haitians, they think, okay, they're poor, they're lazy, they are both people coming over to take our jobs, and they are not treated equally. So I wanted to give them a voice and show them in a different light. And every project that I've been working on ever since, I always try to tell our story, because to me, if other people tell our story, first of all, they won't do it the same way that we do. And sometimes the message is not clear because it didn't live what we lived and they couldn't relate the same. I'm not saying that there's not like great producer who did amazing things. You don't have to be Black to do a great documentary. But I think it's even better when you know what you're talking about, when you lived it and you feel it in the final product.
Yes, we have the foundation for this. So I think this is the best way so we can tell our stories. So amazing job, really, really amazing. And our community needs more people like you. And I'm very sure that you're gonna create and it's gonna come here because we are living in time of change and the influence that we have now is bigger than anymore. Jessy, we know that we poorly see women of color in the media and in the entertainment. We're talking about this right now. So I want to know about not just women of color, but patriarchy. We spoke with Jabulile about this in South Africa and in Africa in general, but it's very important to hear more about this in Guadeloupe, in Trinidad and Tobago, in the Caribbean, how you are fighting with patriarchy as a woman.
So when I was listening to you in Jabulile, I was like, oh man, so this is really everywhere in the world. But yes, it is. It is. It's different level because how she mentioned it, you also have, of course, the cultural aspect of it, how your religion, the cultural aspect and the tradition that you have depending on which country you are. So the US was different in the sense of, we already know that the media are owned by powerful white men. Like, I think everybody knows that. I don't think it's a secret. It's changing because of pressure, of social pressure, of everything that's happening right now. Joy Reid, the journalist, just being, she's the first Black woman who has a national night show in the US on MSNBC. And congratulations to her. And she inspired so many woman. It happened like 2 or 3 weeks ago. So I was very happy about that. But the fact that we know this, we can also find ways to try to climb to the top, knowing this. In Guadeloupe, in Martinique, what is difficult is to fight against the tradition, but not even from men. I will say from women as well, because older generation of women have a certain way of thinking and raising their children that keeps perpetuating what's happening. The first questions they will ask me, oh, do you have children? I always tell them, are you asking the man the same question?
Wow.
If I'm in an interview, first of all, in America, it's illegal. You're not supposed to ask me if I have children because they want to make sure you will be available. But to me, why is my husband not being asked the same question? The second thing is like, oh, is there a particular time you have to leave work to pick up your child? And I'm like, but why are you asking me this in a meeting and not everybody else? And something so simple as, let's say you go to an outing with friends and you have children with you. When it's time to take off the dishes on the table, you will see that women will ask their little girls to help, but not the little boys. So little things like this that just... We're in 2020 and we need to change it. And I do understand the traditions are important, but I don't see why the 6-year-old should have a bigger piece of chicken because he's a guy, he's a man, and the little girl next to him, maybe she's as hungry as him. So little thing that sometimes women don't even think about as they keep doing. And they don't have the same pressure on boys than girls. I see it here. Like, let's say the boy is like free to roam. It's a guy, it's normal. You know, he goes out with his friend. He's free like a bird. The girl, you have to go put on a pair of jeans. You have to make sure you don't talk like this. You have to make sure you don't look at them in the eyes. You can play with boys. It feels like it's our fault. Like we are victim of our womanhood all the time. And it's not fair. And I see it every day here. And even when I see grown-up men, the ways they look at 15-year-old or 20-year-old, right away, you're being sexualized so quickly as a woman in the Caribbean that you don't even have time to figure out who you are, how you feel about yourself. So yes, you can be 15 and you can be already well developed, but you're still 15 years old. And an adult should not look at you the same way he looks at a 25 or 30 years old. But again, for people, if a 15-year-old is sexy, is dressing nice, it's because she's conscious of the sexualization that she's transpiring. So she looked for it. Oh, so she's a loose one. And this is what I hate in the Caribbean, because it's all over the Caribbean islands. It can be French island, English-speaking island. We find, to me, this over-sexualization of teenage girls, and also how their goal in life, find a husband, be a good wife, be a good cook. You need to learn how to cook for your man. And I keep thinking, well, if this is what you want to do, I'm okay with it. But if it's not what you want to do, it should not be imposed to you as a goal in your life. And again, here, if you're the wife, if you don't serve your husband, you're being like, people will look at you like, oh, wow, she's not such a good wife. But they don't see what you do for him on the side. Maybe that's your agreement in your couple. Maybe that's the agreement in life, but no. And as far as work, for the patriarchy, you feel it because let's say something that always happened. Little names, when you're on a shoot, for example, men will call you sweetie, pumpkin, sweetie pie, like little things like this. And I always keep looking at them like, what? Why? So they always have a need to kind of make you feel that you are less than them, in a sense. Or you will have some comments, first of all, about how you look and not what you do. And I do understand that, yes, I'm not saying that if you tell me, oh, you look nice today, I'm feeling bad. It's just that it's not all that I am. And it's not what I want to be judged on all the time. So you still find some people who will not trust a woman and would rather have a man speak with, like they will think that the fact that I'm a woman, I might be pregnant one day, I might want to have 3 children and stop working and take care of my husband. So you still have this. Or I work for Carnival as well. So that's a whole different world.
This is something very different. Representing a so different way. Tell us about this, because you created these documentaries. Tell us more about the Carnival and the perception.
So Carnival is actually a worldwide celebration, and in the Caribbean we celebrate a different way, and depending on the island that you're from. In Guadeloupe we follow the Catholic calendar, so it's like Mardi Gras is the final day, but for a month and a half we do Carnival every Sunday. So we dress up in costume, we go in the street, we dance, we parade, and we have bands, you have people. It's pure joy. Trinidad is different. You have like a lot of feathers, you have very tiny pieces of clothes, and you just get free and get loose for like a week. Basically, you dance, and it's true, you half naked, but it's not mating competition. It's just this, we celebrate Carnival. But when I documented it, I did a documentary on it from Guadeloupe and Trinidad point of view. It was interesting because when I interviewing some men, Some understand the culture 100%. You know, the woman is dancing in front of me. She's not looking for a husband. She's not looking for anything. I'm not judging her. I don't care because they are from Trinidad. That's the culture. Same thing in Guadeloupe. But when it comes to interviewing, let's say, an American man who will come to Trinidad and see this, for him, it's like, oh my God, all the women are so loose here. I can do whatever I want, whenever I want. And they think that they are just object to be taken care of. So that's why I always say it's important to know our roots and it's important to know our history. When you travel, if you go to Nigeria, if you go to South Africa, if you go to Berlin, you have to understand the culture, because what seems to you a certain way is not reality, and it's ignorance. If you go to a country when they celebrate, yes, they're wearing like a little bikini, and it doesn't mean that she's trying to have sex with you. It doesn't mean that she's not a respectful lawyer tomorrow morning that will be in court and nobody will judge her because yesterday she was dancing on all four in the streets. But that's also something in my world. I host Carnival in Guadeloupe every year. I host it, so I'm wearing Carnival costume on TV, and I have men who came here in Guadeloupe tell me, "Oh my God, how are you gonna find a husband dressing like this? If I was your man, I would never let you out of the house like that." And I'm like, first of all, I'm not a dog. Yes, you don't let me out of the house. Yeah. And I explain to them, I say, well, first of all, this is my body. I'm free to present it the way I want. I'm protected legally. It's not like some idea that I'm making. I'm protected. Like, you cannot touch me. Nobody is allowed to touch me. You can judge me if you want, but you have to pass by your ignorance, knowing why am I dressing this way? Why am I representing? And being in a carnival costume doesn't make me less of a woman than a woman wearing a suit. But that's a process. It's a process.
Yes, yes. Jessy, sorry so much. We have about like 2-3 minutes.
Already?
Time flies. I just realized with Jabulile we had wow, it's 30 minutes now. We just 30 minutes. And this is so important, like matters we are talking about right now. And I think it's very important because we spoke about South Africa, we spoke about Guadeloupe, and now talking with you at the same time. But very important for every one of us who's gonna watch or just put it as a set in space. But what do you think, based on your experience as a journalist, as a woman there in the society, what is the first step for Black and brown girls who are having a dream, having a vision, and want to realize it, no matter what it is?
Okay, I'll go fast. I will say be honest with yourself, meaning know what you want, not what your mother wants, not what society wants from you. Be honest with yourself. If this is what you really want, you will put everything in place to get it. But if this is something you convince yourself you want, it's not going to work because it is hard work. You have to fight against a lot of things in your life, so you don't want to have to fight against yourself. So be honest with yourself, know what you want to sacrifice, know what you want out of your life. Do you want to be a career woman? Do you want to have both? Do you want to have children one day? Do you want to be married, not married? Just be open to whatever life will brings you, but know from the beginning, this is what I want and this is what I'm expecting from myself, not the rest of the world. Once you know this, it's simple, I know, but you have to work hard. It cannot just come like this for everyone. You will have some downfall. You have to pick up, find a good entourage. People will boost you. People will tell you, I'm here if you crash. And last thing is, if something bad happened, you have to take some time to know, okay, if it's happening because it's not meant to be, so I'm going to stop this and try a different way, or is it not happening because I have to try a second and a third time? Do not let one fall become your story. You have to make it's an experience. I didn't do it the right way. I'm going to try a second way. But again, you have to be honest with yourself. Maybe it's not working because deep down inside you don't want it to work. So maybe it's something else that you want. And in media, like Jabulile said, be yourself, because that will make the difference against the person who's competing against you. And when you make it, help your sister, help the next girl, help her, guide her, give her advice. I always do it. I mentor young Black women. Help. You got there because of someone. Maybe one person helped you. Be that person for the next Black girl.
The next one. Yes.
Yes.
Thank you so much for being the
My
first.
My pleasure, Lina.
It's a platform. We're going to follow each other definitely.
Yes.
And keep in touch. Enjoy your time. Enjoy your work. You're a true inspiration and a true mentor. And I learned so much from you, from this conversation.
Thank you, Lina.
And talk to you very soon, Jessy.
And keep doing what you're doing. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Bye.
So guys, actually we are done for tonight. The video will be uploaded in the IG live section and we have just 23 seconds and I'm saying hi to Norbert and thank you so much for creating this amazing flyer. Thank you so much to Jabulile. Thank you so much for Jessy and everyone who tuned in tonight. And I hope you guys, you got inspired, you learned something and see you next time. Bye bye.